We are now bringing back to millions of our viewers across the world the event that took place today when Agora Policy Forum took place, and we had as a first inaugural guest Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Yusuf Tuggar.
Thank you very much. I was only made aware that perhaps my speech or opening remarks might be a bit too long, so in order to save time, I will stand on existing protocols and just jump right into it. A very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm honored to address this distinguished gathering at the Agora Policy Forum, a platform that fosters dialogue on policy imperatives for national and global progress. Today, I will speak on Nigeria's foreign policy at a time of global uncertainty, which has profound implications for Nigeria, Africa, and the broader international system. We're gathered here at a time when the international order is undergoing significant transformation. Geopolitical tensions, economic realignments, daily tariffs and trade wars, security threats, climate change, and technological disruptions are reshaping the global landscape in ways that demand strategic recalibration from all nations. Traditional assumptions about democracy and markets are being questioned by state and non-state actors. As Africa's most populous country and a key economic and diplomatic actor, Nigeria must protect and promote our values and commitment to democratic freedoms and the celebration of diversity as we navigate these new complexities with foresight, pragmatism, and resilience. First, I will outline how we understand the global context and how it shapes our diplomacy. I will then outline the foundational principles of our foreign policy. Finally, I will reflect on the broader responsibilities we all share to develop and implement a diplomacy fit for purpose in a world where uncertainties too often seem to mask more hidden opportunities. So, global context. The post-Cold War consensus that shaped global governance for the past 3 decades is increasingly fracturing. The resurgence of great power competition, the fragmentation of multilateralism, and the proliferation of regional conflicts have created a more unpredictable world than ever in our post-independence history. The war in Ukraine has reshaped energy markets, disrupted supply chains, and exacerbated food insecurity, particularly for developing economies such as ours. Conflict in Sudan and the Sahel has illustrated the limits of the old rules-based order as new state and non-state actors flex influence in areas of chronic instability. The global economy is experiencing persistent inflationary pressures, debt crises in emerging markets, and the reconfiguration of trade partnerships. The rise of new technologies from artificial intelligence to digital currencies introduces opportunities and challenges for economic governance and national security. Climate change continues to pose an existential threat, with Africa disproportionately affected despite contributing the least to global emissions. In this context, Nigeria's foreign policy must be dynamic. It must ensure that our national interests are protected while we remain a responsible and engaged member of the international community. And above all, foreign policy must be efficient. If diplomacy is war by other means, the terrible costs of conflict must at least partially be a measure of diplomatic failure. We should invest in capacity and exhaust all available avenues because the alternatives are much worse. In that sense, the triumph of diplomacy should be measured as much by what we do not see, what we can avoid, and what we do see. To take examples from our history, we still reference, and rightly so, the sacrifice Nigeria made in Liberia and Sierra Leone in the 1990s, but not so much the efforts through public diplomacy, back channels, direct engagement, third-party involvement, the balancing of principle with practical detail, all tricks in the diplomatic toolbox that led to the transfer of power in the Gambia without a drop of blood spilled. Tragedies avoided are more easily forgotten than sacrifices made. For this reason, we need to be reminded, even in a transactional world, that diplomacy should take the lead. It is always better to talk. We do not always deliver perfect outcomes, especially where those areas of common interest and good faith are narrow, where one side may face particular local pressures that trump what partnership might deliver. Realistic outcomes are shaped by realistic expectations. We see the existing order deconstructing. It was an order that did not present a level playing field for Nigeria and Africa in terms of access to financing and markets and the tools to facilitate peace, prosperity, and opportunity. As that order breaks down, what follows is much less clear. It is our responsibility as the region's key power to be a voice for Africa, to play our part in helping create a modern and dynamic order that reflects our national and shared interests. And that responsibility is fundamentally diplomatic. Securitization shifts thinking from strategic to tactical, to a reduction in the space for dialogue, compromise, and maneuver. Security, more than ever, tilts towards hardware and technology. Security compared to, so diplomacy at its best is a very human process of interaction. Of course, a strong defense capability and the unspoken jeopardy it carries can be significant assets in negotiation. And there are moments when diplomatic routes have failed, that national interest must be defended by force. But sequencing is everything. Lives and livelihoods depend on it. So moving on to core pillars of Nigeria's foreign policy in the contemporary era, Nigeria's foreign policy has traditionally been anchored on Africa as the centerpiece, supported by non-alignment, economic diplomacy, and global multilateralism. While these principles remain relevant, they must evolve to reflect the realities of our time. I'll outline 4 strategic pillars that define Nigeria's foreign policy approach in this period of global uncertainty. 1, strategic autonomy in a multipolar world. As global power shifts towards multipolarity, Nigeria must assert greater strategic autonomy in its international engagements. We're strengthening our bilateral relations with emerging powers such as China, India, Brazil, while maintaining constructive partnerships with the United States, the European Union, and traditional allies. We aim to ensure that Nigeria is not merely a passive actor in global affairs, but an active shaper of outcomes that align with our national interests. 2, economic diplomacy and sustainable development. With the increasing volatility in markets, Nigeria is prioritizing economic diplomacy to attract foreign investment, enhance trade partnerships, and secure development financing. The implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area presents a unique opportunity for Nigeria to consolidate its position as a regional economic hub. An important case in point, especially regarding diversification and the creation of new markets, is the Trans-Saharan gas pipeline. The project is a planned natural gas pipeline from Nigeria to Algeria. Then you have the Nigeria-Morocco gas pipeline, which has been renamed the African Atlantic Gas Pipeline, a 5,600 kilometer long pipeline project that aims to transport natural gas from Nigeria to Morocco, potentially connecting to the European gas network via the Maghreb-Europe gas pipeline. Both projects present a unique opportunity to diversify Europe's gas supplies and represent potent physical symbols of Nigeria's place in a new international order. Beyond trade, economic diversification remains a core priority. To reduce over-reliance on hydrocarbon revenues, we're deepening engagement with global partners in renewable energy, technology transfer, and industrialization. Economic diplomacy is not just about investment flows, it's about ensuring that Nigeria is well positioned to benefit from emerging global value chains. I'm not even going to delve into critical minerals and the solid minerals sector. So, 3 is security and regional stability. Nigeria's security challenges, particularly terrorism, banditry, and piracy, cannot be addressed in isolation. Our foreign policy recognizes the transnational nature of security threats, necessitating a robust regional and international approach. Through ECOWAS, we have spearheaded initiatives to counter military takeovers and support democratic consolidation in West Africa. The Multinational Joint Task Force remains a critical mechanism in the fight against terrorism and insurgency in the Lake Chad Basin. MNJTF is a clear example of a homegrown African solution to an African problem that other partners can key into. With the proper framing and preferred solutions, such an approach is invariably more effective than exogenous strategies from abroad. Maritime security in the Gulf of Guinea has been significantly enhanced through Nigeria's Deep Blue project and regional coordination with the African Union and international partners. Under the Tinubu administration, no single piracy incident has occurred in Nigeria's territorial waters. Safer sea routes mean lower shipping and insurance costs, which in turn boost industry, jobs, and opportunities. At a time when global security alliances are shifting, Nigeria will continue to reinforce its defense diplomacy, intelligence sharing mechanisms, and peace contributions to promote regional and international stability. The world needs a militarily stronger Nigeria to keep our region and the African continent safe. The prevailing pay-as-you-go approach to weapons systems requires that Nigeria domesticates production with the help of willing partners. This requires deft diplomacy and diplomatic nous, which the Tinubu administration is deploying via the 4D. 4, multilateralism and Nigeria's global voice. In an era of straining multilateralism, Nigeria remains committed to strengthening global institutions to ensure they are more inclusive and responsive to the needs of developing countries. Nigeria continues to advocate for UN Security Council reform, calling for permanent African representation to reflect contemporary global realities. Our participation in forums such as the G77, BRICS Plus, and the Commonwealth ensures that we champion the interests of the global South in trade, climate negotiations, and financial negotiations. Climate diplomacy is a key priority as Nigeria pushes for a just transition that secures climate financing for African nations and promotes green industrialization. Multilateral engagement is not merely about diplomacy, it is about leveraging collective action to address challenges that no country can tackle, from pandemics to cyber threats. So, Nigeria's foreign policy and the role of thought leadership. A nation's foreign policy is only as firm as the intellectual and strategic framework that underpins it. This is why fora such as the Agora Policy Roundtable are invaluable. Policymakers, scholars, and industry leaders must collaborate to provide thought leadership that informs our diplomatic choices. Nigeria must remain proactive, adaptive, and innovative in its foreign engagements as it navigates global uncertainty. Evidence-based policymaking, a long-term vision, and a commitment to national and continental advancement must underpin our strategy. In conclusion, distinguished guests, Nigeria's foreign policy during a time of global uncertainty is not merely about responding to external pressures, but also about shaping our destiny within the international order. It is about ensuring that our economy is resilient, our security is safeguarded, voice is amplified in global decision-making. As we look to the future, I urge all stakeholders, diplomats, academics, business leaders, and civil society to play their part in strengthening Nigeria's global standing. The task is complex, but with strategic foresight and national unity, we will position Nigeria as a formidable force in the evolving international system.
Thanks again, Your Excellency, for that wonderful speech.
Thank you.
By the way, the speech was not part of the design, but I'm glad that he actually gave the speech because he has touched on most of the things that I would like to ask him questions about. I didn't introduce myself at the beginning. My name is Waziri Adio. I'm the founder of Agora Policy, and it's my privilege today to have to ask a few questions of the Honorable Minister before I will throw open the floor. So, because he has dwelt extensively on the direction, the scope of Nigeria's foreign policy, especially in this period of uncertainty. So there are certain things I wanted to ask before that I will not ask again. And in the interest of time, I will shorten my questions so that we'll have enough time for adequate interaction, and also to take advantage of the brain trust in this hall. So, Your Excellency, thank you again. You just came back from Republic of Niger, or Niger Republic, early this morning. And it seems we're trying to repair a relationship which, was strained, maybe because of error of omission or commission, right? There are people who believe that we mismanaged relationship with Niger, that we didn't put a lot of thought into the kind of actions that we took as a country, or that we led ECOWAS, to take. Niger is a country that will have a very long border with, in actual fact, 1,608 kilometers. Niger shares border with 7 states across the country. And not just that, Niger and Nigeria share a long cultural and historical ties, right? So now, it seems we are trying to walk back. What prompted your trip, and what can we expect from this going forward?
Thank you very much. I always say that diplomacy is a process, it's not an event. So this is the culmination of a process, work that has been going on by diplomats. In fact, the coup in Niger happened before I became minister. So I would say that I hit the ground running. We started working on Niger from day one. And of course, the president has been focused on that as well. And the coup in Niger was not due to any fault of Nigeria. It's not Nigeria's fault. In this speech, I talked about exogenous factors. And we have to bear in mind that our neighbors to the north came up with a policy that criminalized migration, that affected the migration economy of Niger, from Agadez to anything north in Niger. The ancillary services that were being provided that sustained that migration economy became illegal due to a law, Law 2015-36 that was passed in Niger, which was encouraged, some might even say sponsored by certain organs of the United Nations, by the European Union, and the government in Niger at the time, 2015, because they wanted to discourage migration. But in doing so, they threw away the baby with the bathwater, because this is a region that relies heavily on movement of people. This is the way we've been for centuries. That is why we have seasonal migration as well. So when you criminalize migration, saying that anybody that transports a suspected migrant in their vehicle or gives them a room to spend the night, then they're guilty of a crime, then of course it adds additional pressure. In addition to that, there was also the initiative to strengthen the hands of certain Azawad groups, some even separatists or irredentists, which meant you were creating a head-on collusion between separatists and military that are trained to keep countries together. So we have to bear all of this in mind. I don't want to delve too much into it. And so by the time President Tinubu was sworn in as president, these things were already long in motion. And what tends to happen with ECOWAS is in times of crisis, the countries push the leadership to Nigeria, the chairmanship. So if you remember, President Tinubu was sworn in, and then shortly thereafter, he was asked to become the chair of the authority of heads of state and government. So he himself was just trying to settle down when this was, he was thrust into this position. But again, it is a community of equals, countries, and when the authority of the heads of states and government tilt one way, you cannot alone, single-handedly, especially as a new president, turn everything around and then start being belligerent. So he had no choice but to work with the circumstances. But as I said, it's a process. We've been working at it. And of course, the Nigerians also were perhaps upset that ECOWAS adopted comprehensive jurisdictional sanctions on them, as compared to what might have been described as list-based sanctions that was applied on Mali and Burkina Faso. So there's so many factors, but we've made a lot of progress. I don't know if you heard the statement of the foreign minister of Niger. He said, as far as they're concerned, the disagreement or misunderstanding between them and Nigeria is over. So we're happy, we're making progress.
Okay, fantastic. That's fair enough. I don't want to press it. You said something about the president trying to settle down when he had to take a decision. Could that be a reason why, yes, even if a committee of equals, right? But as the chair, there's a way in which you can also moderate discussion for a more considered kind of approach. But that's water under the bridge. The strained relationship.
And you see, this is why in the speech I was saying that it's important to put diplomacy first and do it effectively by funding it so that you can avert crisis, and it would even be a cost-saving measure. So, but there were no ministers at the time this thing happened. There were no ministers. You know, maybe he had a few advisors, and he had to make do with what was available then. So
okay, that's fair. But the relationship with the strained relationship with Niger is also within a bigger backdrop, which is about the AES bloc, and it's also coinciding with when ECOWAS is turning 50. It's actually turning 50 next month, and also under our leadership. So on one hand, ECOWAS is turning 50. At the same time, ECOWAS is also fracturing. We started with 15, then went to 16, then went back to 15, now it's 12. So two questions, actually. The first is the outreach to Niger, is it going to be extended to the AES bloc? Are they expected back soon? And how soon? That's the first thing. The second is your assessment of ECOWAS itself at 50. How well has it held up? And what can be done to ensure a more perfect union?
the door is always open for them to return, and even within ECOWAS, you have groupings. You've got Manu River and others. Even between Nigeria and Niger, one of the frameworks that we're trying to reinvigorate is the Niger Joint Commission, and we only have such a joint commission, a permanent joint commission with Niger, and vice versa. Niger only has that with us. So we're trying to use it for micro diplomacy and all of that. So there's nothing, and they even said it yesterday in Niamey, that they have not closed the door on returning to ECOWAS. So this is something, it goes back to what I said, diplomacy is a process, not an event, and sometimes it takes time because there's so many, it's a matrix of variables, so many factors at play. So we will continue to encourage them to return. In terms of the progress that ECOWAS has made, huge progress. Huge progress. ECOWAS trade liberalization scheme is well underway. Abidjan, Lagos corridor, well underway. If you look at the digitization of the customs processes for easier movement of goods and services, SIGMAT, underway. I just finished talking about the African Atlantic gas pipeline. We already have the West Africa gas pipeline delivering gas from Nigeria to Ghana. So this is going to be an extension going all the way to Morocco, linking up all the ECOWAS countries, less the three landlocked countries that were not going to be a part of it unless, you know, we build these gas pipelines to link them anyway. So these are things that would otherwise have required that ECOWAS considers, you know, the landlocked countries within the community. But so now we're just focusing on what exists. So it makes it even stronger. And then you have to also factor in the African Union's principles of complementarity, subsidiarity, and the fact that the African Union itself works within the framework of regional economic communities. So even with candidatures, with representation at the AU, in the United Nations, You're not going to find a situation where ECOWAS comes and says, these are our candidates, this is who we endorse, or this is the country that is going to get this position or that position, and then 3 countries present their own candidate or their own, bid, and then ECOWAS would be ignored. No, it's not going to happen. So there's so many things that they will, wake up to and realize that, this is serious. GIABA, so Financial Action Task Force, blacklisting of countries, grey listing, and all of that. GIABA works with the Financial Action Task Force. It doesn't work with AES. West Africa Health Organization. It's going to relocate. It's going to leave Burkina Faso. It will end up in one of the ECOWAS countries. Huge loss for the AES countries. I can go on and on and on, but that's not what we're focusing on. We're still, making them realize the challenges that they will continue to face.
One other quick question on ECOWAS. There was a big event organized by CDD and I think Wademos or so yesterday, and the focus on ECOWAS at 50. And the question was, should ECOWAS reform or disintegrate? So I put that question to you.
There's always room for improvement, for reforms. So it's a time to reflect, for us to look at our protocols, see how we can fine-tune them, improve them, and it's up to it's a collective decision. We have to look at it, and it's happening soon.
Okay.
28th of May.
Good. Still on our sub-region, you mentioned about global uncertainties and crises everywhere you turn to. Well, it seems West Africa is particularly going through it at the moment. The return of the coup bet and the possibility of even contagion. You have insurgency and insecurity across the place. You have proxy wars, including by non-state actors, and mercenaries and all of that. What do you think is driving this? Why is West Africa becoming a basket case? And what are the pathways and what role can Nigeria play in this respect?
Exogenous and endogenous factors. The exogenous or external factors, I mentioned certain policies by some of the developed countries and neighbors that we have that have affected us adversely because the focus, the weaponization of migration itself, and the approach to the fight against terrorism, the breaking up of Libya. These are all things that we're now, feeling the effects of. And then internally, our own problem, and this cuts across both Anglophone, Francophone countries, is the failure of governance at the local level. The fact that local governments are not functioning, and then when they don't function at that level, there are no opportunities for youths. It's a very youthful region, and then those that come with any semblance of order and organization can easily replace local government. That's what happened with Boko Haram.
Well, that was Nigeria's Foreign Affairs Minister, Amb.Yusuf Tuggar, speaking at the Agora Policy Forum, where he talked about Nigeria's foreign policy.
Sigtv, news in your pocket.